Hello, this is Heather of Shutterbug 101. Today we'll be going over the Nikon D850, over the doors, buttons, and menus. Let's go ahead and get started. The Nikon D850 is one of the grandmasters of all full-frame Nikon cameras. It features a 45 megapixel sensor, 151 autofocus points, and a touchscreen tilting LCD screen. As this camera does not offer any preset scene modes as you see in other cameras, this camera was built for the pros as it gives you the manual modes to control. It has no built-in flash, so it is recommended for event and portrait photography that you also purchase an external flash and diffuser. The D850 also shoots at 7 frames per second, shoots 4K video, has a mic and headphone port, and is also environmentally sealed. Today, we will be going over the extensive button and door display as well as the menus. So as you can see, the Nikon D850 is a monster. It's a fairly large camera, nice good grip, and definitely has a very professional look to it. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started here, because it does have an extensive display of different buttons and doors. So we'll go ahead and get started at the front, as we always do. So as you can see, we have a few different buttons here. This button specifically is going to be for interchanging any lenses. Now, this camera does not usually come with a lens, so that's just how I'm displaying it today. What you do is you would typically hold this down. You don't have to do this with the cap, but just for display purposes, turn and take it out. At that point, if you wanted to put a lens back on, you would match the white dot up with the white dot, which is here and here. Turn and you're all set. Also, on the side here, you can see that we have a little switch. Now this switch is going to be an easy way to go from autofocus and manual focus. Now on most Nikon lenses, you'll find that they also have a switch there as well. So you can either use the switch on the lens, or you can switch it here to go manual focus, here to go autofocus. The buttons over here, of course, your function button. The function buttons are going to be programmable. So it's essentially your shortcuts. The whole idea of why there's so many different buttons and tools on the outside of the camera, so the idea is that you'll never have to go into the menu systems themselves. So you actually find that after we've gone through the outside and gone into the menu, that there'll be quite a few things that are actually repeated. So the function 1 button is programmable. So at the moment, the FN1 button is not programmed to anything. So you can do that through your menu, going into custom settings and assigning your FN1 buttons. The PV is actually going to be your preview. So what that does is it gives you a sense of what your depth of field is going to be. So by hitting this button, it gives you sort of a preview into what the photo may come out as. Now, it's not foolproof, but it's pretty darn close. The doors up here, because you don't usually see doors on the front of the camera, are actually going to be for like a remote control, for a flash unit, and those are what those are going to be for. This could also be an attachment for a ring light that you can mount to the front of your camera, and that's where you're going to find those tools there. Also on the front here, we can see that this is our little adjustment wheel. So depending on what mode we are in, that and this rear wheel here is actually going to change shutter speed, aperture, whatever you have it programmed to. Going to the sides of the camera here. So going to this side, you can see that we have quite a few doors. Under this door here, that's going to be our headphone port right here. And then this is going to be our mic port. That's also indicated by the pictures on the outside of the doors here. Under this door, of course, is going to be your USB transfer cord to transfer images from your D850 to your computer, unless you have a card reader, which I just recommend doing that. Otherwise, you'll use this to do any firmware upgrades or anything like that that comes out about. HDMI, so you can actually get an HDMI cable, plug that guy into your TV and do a slideshow. And then of course we have an indication that this camera does have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. On this side of the camera, this is where our dual card slot door is going to be. And you'll see that one is bigger than the other, and it is indicated by the door here that this is an XQD card reader and this is an SD card reader. I find that the XQD cards are going to find themselves in more cameras in the future. They're just better archival cards. They last a lot longer. They're naturally just a high speed. So that'll be a good card to invest in, but they are very pricey at the moment. Going to the top of the camera. So, of course, we have our on and on switch. If we go past the one to the little light bulb, it'll actually light this up nice and green color. So if you are shooting at night or you just want to be able to see your settings in a dark room, that's going to turn that on. So you naturally can't tell very much right now, but if I like cover it up, you can still see it, and then you just saw it turn off. All right, so this is going to be our record button. Now with this button, you do have to swap it into your video mode in order to do video. So if you swap it there, and then you do video here, it's going to be push once to start recording, push again to stop recording. And that's that. And if you want to take pictures, you have your camera button there. And we'll go over more of this in a moment. You have your ISO button here. So if we click and hold that down, we're going to be able to switch from ISO auto to giving a more custom here. So you can swap it from 100 all the way up to, let's see, to 25,600, which you should never need, but hey, it's there, right? So we'll go all the way back down here. Oh, actually you can go down to 64. So you can go really sharp if you wanted to, which is kind of cool. Otherwise, you know, keeping it in auto is nice too, and you can actually set a limit. This is going to be your exposure dial. So when you click and hold this, you can actually adjust with your back dial here. So click and hold that. The plus is going to make your image brighter. The minus is going to make your image darker. So it's just an easy way to adjust, like getting a slightly brighter or darker image without having to change any major settings. This, of course, is going to be our display screen, where it's going to display all the settings that you have going on your camera. So it's just an easy way to glance at. At the moment, right now, if we were to hold that up, it's set to center weighted metering, manual mode, taking pictures in RAW. You know, it's just going off of the center focus for focus area. White balance is on auto. Right now I don't have any cards in it, so it's reading empty. And then the battery level is saying full. Now if I go and I just push this button halfway down, up will pop our f-stop, or our aperture, and our shutter speed. And because I don't have a lens on it, it's like, okay, yep, I can't give you an accurate reading, which is perfectly fine. So those numbers do change when you do have a lens on there. Now, as I said in the description, this does not have a pop-up flash. Thank God. I hate pop-up flashes. They're awful. They're really nice in a tight spot, but overall, it'll make your DSLR look like you're shooting with a point and shoot. It's, you know, definitely not the most ideal flash to use. So, you do have to purchase a external flash if you plan on doing any events, weddings, portraits, any of that. And then I seriously recommend a diffuser. Magmod has been my favorite of recent. Very easy to use, very convenient, and the pictures come out great. So I might do a tutorial video later on showing the difference of using a diffuser or not, just to show you the difference there. Now going to kind of our fancy dial here. Now this one is quite different from any dial that you have seen in other cameras. A lot of the full frames are like this for Nikon, so it's just, you know, if you've shot with a full frame before, like the D810, and you've upgraded to the D850, you know, it's going to be fairly similar. So we'll start with the ring around it here. So there is a little white notch here indicating what setting you have it set on. there's a little button back here. So you would hold that to be able to turn this ring around. So what these rings are is, we'll start at the end here. That's going to be your mirror up mode. So what that means is that every time you take the picture, you do have to hit this button twice in order to take a shot. So the first shot, it'll lift up the mirror, and the second shot, it'll be straight to the sensor. So it almost gives you more of a mirrorless effect, I would think. I haven't had the chance to play with this one quite yet, but it's available. If we go to the next one here, that's going to be kind of our universal little symbol for a timer. So that's where you're going to find that. This is going to be for your quiet mode. So you have QC, which is quiet continuous. This one is going to be quiet single. This is going to be continuous high, continuous low. So continuous high is going to be 7 frames per second. Continuous low, I think, is going to be about 3 or 4 frames. And then you have your single shot mode. So if you click and hold the button down in your continuous mode, it's going to keep taking pictures at 7 frames per second, 3 frames per second, whatever it is. And then single mode is when you click and hold this button down, it's going to take 1 shot. Okay, so going over the rest of the dial here. So up here on the top, if you press quality, it's actually going to show up over here. So you can actually change your quality from fine quality JPEG, fine plus, normal basic, TIFF, which is kind of a unique feature for D850. You have RAW and JPEG through all of those features there, and then you just have RAW. So depending on what you're going to be doing with your photos, RAW is definitely going to be for those that are interested in Photoshop and Lightroom. JPEG is just to get that picture right away. If you're shooting with this camera and you're looking into getting to be a professional, you just wanted the best of the best to prepare yourself for that, definitely consider shooting in RAW and taking advantage of that feature there. We have WB, which is going to be white balance. If you click and hold that, you're going to be able to change different autos, your actual temperature for Kelvin. You have cloudy, sunny, fluorescence, you name it. So it really just kind of depends on what you're doing. You can play around with those. White balance is essentially going to change the temperature of your photo, make it a little bit cooler or warmer. But cameras these days are really good at determining what the white balance should be, so you shouldn't ever really have to change it unless you're shooting in a studio and you're getting maybe a bit of a cool cast, you want to make it a little bit warmer, that sort of thing there. We have our metering mode here. So if we click and hold this button and change it up at the top, you're going to see that it's going to change right over here. So the one with the 1 dot is going to be your spot metering, where it's taking that light from. You're going to have the all over, very similar to the picture on the button that I'm holding. That's going to be your all over metering. And then you have like the 2 parentheses in the middle, and that's going to be center weighted. I'm personally more center weighted because I tend to center my things first and have it adjust accordingly. And then of course your mode button here. So if we click your mode button and we start dialing through these, you have manual mode, aperture mode, shutter speed mode, and then you have your program mode. Notice there is no auto, there is no scene modes, there's no easy way out of this. You have to know about your f-stops, you have to know about your shutter speeds. P mode is going to be your easiest mode going into this camera if you're still learning about those things, because at least the camera will help you out. And then moving into aperture and shutter speed accordingly, depending on what you're doing. And then at that point, you can fine tune with manual. We will be doing a kind of like a beginner photography intro video here, hopefully soon in the next month or so. But let me know if you would like to see more going over specific things there. Anyway, back to the camera. Now we're going to go to the back of the camera here. Yeah, back to the camera, going back to the camera. So we're going to go over the buttons here. So we have our playback button. So if I had a card in this and we push this button, we'd be able to view pictures. Now naturally there's no memory card, so I can't view. but you can go through photos with your directional pad here. And then if you want to delete photos, you just have to press your trash can button and confirm that you want to delete an image. Here's our menu button. We'll go over that in a bit. We have our key button here, which is going to be in playback mode. It's actually going to protect images from being deleted. Otherwise, it's also a question mark button, which on certain things, say we're on our info button, you try and do something, there's a little info screen that pops up saying you can't do this. Well, why can't I do that? It indicates that you can push your question mark button to find out more details on why. These buttons here are going to be for zooming into your pictures after you've done playback. So you can zoom in to see if it's really in focus, then zoom back out. Your OK button to confirm when it comes to certain messages or settings. Here's another shortcut button, FN2. Currently, this one, again, doesn't have any settings, so you do have to set that one as well. We have our diopter control, which is going to be this guy here. So you do have to pull this guy out, which is nice, and then adjust this dial accordingly to your eyesight, and then you push it back in and it will lock it up. So there's no accidental turning of it to have to reset it, which is nice. We have our autofocus on, our back focus button. Now you can turn this on or off. Personally, I don't like back button focus. For a lot of people, they think it's a lot easier because it's, you have the ease of access right there because that's where your thumb happens to line up for some people. I like mine to just be my front shutter button, but that's just me. So you can program this, try it out, see what works for you. You do have a little joystick here to move around your focus point accordingly. We have a lock button here, so that'll avoid anything from being toggled or messed with or anything like that. So I can still hit my info button to see my info here rather than on the top of the screen. It's a little bit bigger. We can see a little bit easier here. You can also unlock that. We have our informational button. So this is essentially going to be kind of like a quick menu, if you will. So you can actually program these as well. So notice that this little question mark is popping up down here. If you hit this question mark, oh, that's what it does. So you can actually set custom settings in there. Push our back button. You can custom put anything you want in these that you find that you might change frequently. We've already gone over the video and photo mode. This, of course, is going to be your live view button. So at the moment, there's no lens on there, so it's not really pulling up anything. But essentially, it'll give you a live view through the screen versus having to look through the viewfinder, which can be helpful if you have this on a tripod, you're doing long exposures, whatever it may be. And then, of course, the bottom of the camera, we do have a universal tripod mount. We do have our battery compartment as well. So now at this point we're going to start going through the menus, and this is going to be the most extensive part of the video because Nikon menus have a lot to them, and when it comes to the menus you may find that you're not going to use a lot of what's on them, which is okay. So a lot of these I'm actually going to skip over because it's going to be more complicated to try and explain, and you're going to find that you're not going to use them very often. It's going to be for very, very specific reasons, and at that point, you'll probably already know it about the cameras, why you purchased it, so on and so forth. So the very first menu here is going to be our playback menu. So if we go into the menu here, come on, go into the playback menu. You can delete photos, you can change playback folders, you can hide images, you can change the display options, you can copy, you can turn the image review on or off. That just means like the picture popping up on the screen after it's been taken. You can do afterburst for it to show, auto image rotation, might as well keep it on, that way it's already rotated for you. Rotate tall, yep, absolutely, and then when you plug your HDMI cable in, if you wanted to put a slideshow, you just select slideshow there. And you can also send to your smartphone through the SnapBridge app as well. So you would get through that in your playback menu. Now if we go to our shooting menu here, we'll go up to the top, start at the top here. So photo shooting menu bank. So you can customize these as you would like. Extended photo menu banks. If you wanted even more settings to program, you can turn that on. Let's see, you can change the file name of how it's saving to the playback. Primary slot selection. So if you wanted your primary slot to be your SD or XQD card slot, depending on what you wanted that primary to be, and then what you wanted that secondary slot function to be, if you wanted it to just be a backup, if you wanted it to be overflow, if you wanted to save RAW to one and JPEG to another, however you want to do that, it's pretty nifty. So at least then you can do it however you want and have enough room for both. Flash control, image area, image quality, same as what we went through on the top. Image size, you can, it's the same thing. It's just pretty much the same as that quality there. If you want to shoot in TIFF, RAW, JPEG, whatever it may be. ISO sensitivity settings, so you can set this to a specific sensitivity. So if you were like, oh, I want to have it on auto, but I don't want it to go any higher than, let's say, for this full frame, 8,000. Right, so say you have, say you want that sensitivity control on. The maximum sensitivity, you don't want it to go past 8,000. So you put this at the lower number there. And that way, on auto, the camera's going to decide between 64 and 8,000 and won't go to that 25,000 limit if you didn't want it to. That's just, it's up to you. It's just preferable. For me, I'd rather not worry about my ISO unless I'm like specifically worried about my ISO. But if I'm just walking around, I'm on a hike, or I'm at a certain event and it's in the middle of the day, I'm really not going to worry about my ISO. I'd rather just put it on auto. Your white balance, which we also went through on top. Manage picture control, so if you wanted to save, edit, rename, whatever you want to do there. Color space, keep it on RGB. Active D-lighting, long exposure noise reduction, keep that off. You might as well just do your noise reduction in post shop. And then when it comes to using this, it actually, when you're doing night photography, takes a lot longer for the camera to get back into picture taking. So it's just better to keep it off. Let's see, vignette control. Yeah, I mean, that's also a thing. If you wanted, say if you had a certain lens that, when you put a hood on, gave this sort of dark surrounding to it, the camera can kind of get rid of that, which is kind of nice. You have flicker reduction if you're doing video in fluorescent lighting. Auto bracketing, multiple exposures. High dynamic range, keep it off. I don't think that's necessary. I think that's, in my opinion, it's almost kind of cheating. It's just shoot the picture and edit it in Photoshop if you want to kind of boost it here and there. Now, I'm not saying it's bad to use it, but it's just not my preference. Interval timer shooting, so if you wanted to do kind of like a time lapse, do like star trails, something like that, you can program that. Silent live view photography, never tried this. So there's just, there's features in here that you may find that you'll never use, and that's okay. Then we have our movie shooting menu. At this point, if we go here, you can reset the shooting menu if you find that something's gone wrong. You have file naming, where you want the destination to be, image area, very similar to your photos here, frame size and rate. So if you want it HD, 4K, how high you want the quality, the movie file type, again, white balance, noise reduction, flicker reduction, microphone sensitivity, wind noise. All of these can be found in the movie shooting menu. The little pencil here, this is going to be the one that's probably the most time consuming, because here, instead of just telling you all the settings, it actually puts it into little sub-menus. So you have the autofocus menu, metering and exposure menu, timers and AE lock menu, shooting and display menu, bracketing and flash menu, controls, movie. So if we click the autofocus menu and we just scroll down through them, you'll see that it'll start with a autofocus, but it'll actually continue to trail into the other. Right. So starting in our autofocus menu here, and as we go down, it's only going to reach more of the different sections that we had. So a lot of these, you're really not going to touch. It's, for me to kind of go over them one by one and go through the complication of them is really just going to overcomplicate things, and I think just waste a lot of time. So if you specifically have any questions about any specific menu item and you want to know what it is, please leave a comment below and I would be happy to answer any questions in detail for you. Other than that, we're just kind of generally go over this. So you can change your focusing, tracking, lock on, 3D tracking, number of focus points, storing by orientation, autofocus mode restrictions, focus point wraparound, so it gives more of a 3D conclusion to kind of where it's focusing at. Focus point options, you have ISO sensitivity step value. 1/3 is going to be the most popular, so I would just leave it there. Let's see, we had matrix metering, center weighted area, how big you wanted that center area to be, or how specific you wanted it to be. Shutter release, AEL, don't worry about that. Standby timer. So standby timer is when you leave the camera alone for a little bit and kind of goes into a sleep mode. So you can adjust this. Right now it's set to 6 seconds. You can set it up to 30 minutes long, or no limit if you just want it to stay on. No going to sleep, no saving that battery. I think like 5 minutes is pretty good if you're on your toes, you have your camera in your hands, you want to be ready for it, you don't want to go to sleep right away. I'd say 1 minute is a good general one to have. You can set a self timer, monitor off delay. You can actually control your continuous low on the dial here, what that shooting speed is. So you can set it to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 shot per second. Max continuous release. Let's see. A lot of these are just overcomplicating things. Like, I don't know why they put so many of these things in there. Peaking highlight color, that might be something for you to know about. So if you're taking a picture of something really bright outside, it's high noon, you're getting really high highlights, it'll actually highlight the highlight in a certain color, red, green, blue, or white, I believe. And at that point, it's just going to let you know, hey, there's a lot of highlights here to where you're losing detail. So it's just to kind of give you some information. You can turn a grid display in your viewfinder if you would like. You can change your LCD illumination. You can change your LCD illumination. Good Lord. You can change your LCD illumination. You can change your different bracketing and flash options here if you're into that. Controls, this is where you're gonna custom control all of like your function buttons. If you want to change like what the center button did, if you wanted to customize your command dials, any of those you can customize on the back here. Because like I said, their whole goal was to have you be able to access everything on the outside of the camera, which is why there's so many buttons, rather than go into the menu and search for things and then miss your opportunity of taking a picture. And then of course you have like, your movie options here, which is just custom control assignment, highlight brightness. So if we kind of go over to the wrench here is our next one. One thing that I do go over all of my walkthroughs is formatting your memory card and why it's important, because a lot of people don't know about this. When it comes to formatting your memory card, it's very important to do every now and then. So say, for example, you take pictures at an event. You go, you make sure your pictures are backed up to a computer, and there's two two kinds of photographers really that will do. There are really two kinds of photographers. The ones that will take their card, back it up to their computer, put away the card, put in a new card to do other things, and leave those pictures on the other card as kind of an archival piece. Versus the person that will take their card, put it in their computer, back it up to several sources, and then erase everything on the card to reuse it. So if you are the type of person to erase everything on the card and reuse it, I recommend instead of using your trash can, or instead of just selecting all and deleting them, you want to put the card back in the camera, go to your wrench, and you want to go to Format Memory Card. When you delete with the trash can, your pictures essentially are just hidden. They're turned invisible. They're put in this invisible recycling bin. Over so much time of using that trash can, that recycling bin gets full. So there's data space being taken up, even though you can't see it happening. And that can cause corruption to future images, loss, destruction. So just for protecting your future images, what you want to do is you want to go to Format Memory Card, which is going to permanently erase all of your files, and it's going to reset it to how the card was purchased. So it's just going to be better off for the card and for your future pictures. So through the same menu, you can change the language, you can change the time zone and date, monitor brightness. A lot of this is just going to be like the physical attributes. Notice down here that you can actually access the question mark as well. So you can actually either hit the question mark or hit the question mark up here. It's actually going to tell you what these things are as well. So in case I'm just kind of skipping over these, you can actually press the question mark on most of these and it's going to tell you what it is. And if you have further questions, you can let me know. You can clean your image sensor, which just means it's going to kind of shake it off. You can lock the mirror up for cleaning, which is only going to be done by a trained professional from a camera store, from Nikon. Just make sure you don't do it yourself unless you are for sure you're not going to destroy your camera, because it could, make or break your sensor. You can add image comments, copyright information, turn the beep on or off, control your HDMI, airplane mode. You can also connect to your smart device through your wrench here, as well as your playback menu, also your Wi-Fi settings, your battery info, slot empty release lock, reset all settings. So say if you are the type of person to just go through, you want to play with things, you forgot what you did, and now you want your camera to stop doing whatever it is it's doing wrong, reset all settings to how you purchased it, and everything should fix itself. You also have your firmware version, so you can make sure that you do any firmware upgrades, make sure it's up to date. The next menu here is going to be your retouch menu, which is, it's a retouch menu, so it's editing in your camera. Now personally, I would never use this because I think this screen is too small to be able to do any accurate changes. But the Nikon rep does argue that this is pretty top-notch because it works best with Nikon photos. You have red eye correction, you can straighten your photo, you can do perspective control. So they're worth trying out if you want to play with it. It does save a copy, it doesn't overwrite your image, so it is something to try if you wanted to. And then you have My Menu, which is another customizable menu for you to use. So instead of digging through all of these menus here, you can actually add to My Menu the specific options that you would change yourself. That way, when you're out, you're taking pictures, you've exited out of your menu, you go, I want to change that, and it's something that's not laid out on the outside. You hit your menu, it'll go right to My Menu, and you'll be all set. It'll be all right there. Well, that pretty much covers the D850. Now I know, like I said, I didn't go into a ton of detail on most of the things in the menu. It would take a long time for me to explain every single little thing. So if you have a specific question about something in the menu specifically, please reach out to me through the comments. I will be happy to explain it for you. If you have any other questions about this camera, leave a comment. If you have a camera that you would like me to touch on, if you want to learn something specific about your camera that maybe you haven't learned about, like using your Wi-Fi, certain things about the menu, learning about your manual modes, just reach out to me. I'd be happy to help. I'll add your camera to the list and we'll make sure we get it posted. Until then, keep your eye out for inspiration, Shutterbugs, and have a great day. Bye!